It's not a good situation. What we see now is what happens in a crisis, and the GDP, the economic growth, is negative in a crisis, and that's not good, because it means that important activities have stopped, like university teaching and ordinary work, and many people cannot find jobs, so they are leaving the cities and going back to the rural areas. So it's not a good situation. This is not planned. What we need to do is to have sustainable development policies, and then we need to make sure that we invest in the good stuff. We invest in sustainable technologies. We invest in education. We invest in health. All of these things will increase economic growth. But then, of course, we have to stop fossil fuels also, and that will have a negative effect on GDP. But the net effect is not so important. But I think the net effect will be more economic. India will continue having economic growth in sustainable development, as I showed you in the slides with the staples. But it's mainly the sustainable parts of the economy that must grow. This is important. So now, after COVID-19, it's important to stimulate the right things in the economy. Don't stimulate transportation. Don't stimulate fossil fuels, but stimulate solar power, stimulate wind power, stimulate water sanitation, and stimulate education, because those are the sustainable parts of the economy.
Thomas, I have another question. That's a doubt. Do you think that our GDP will reach back the regular growth in 1 year, or perhaps 2 years, if everything goes well, if we can control that pandemic situation?
Yeah, I think, but now we have a window of opportunity, because we're talking about bouncing back. The economy must bounce back, but we don't want to bounce back to the previous situation, because we know that there are many things that are unsustainable in every society. So we don't want just to recover everything that was before. We want to bounce back better. These are the words of the World Bank: to bounce back better. That means to invest in solar energy, wind power, health, education, sanitation, and so on, to actually achieve, to reach the sustainable development goals without investing too much in fossil fuels. Because if we just bounce back and the GDP will recover and it's full of unsustainable stuff like fossil fuels, then it's unsustainable. That's not desirable. It's important to make sure that while we are recovering from COVID-19, we are making a better economy. We are investing in what we want, the social and ecological goals, to look at the SDGs, to invest in sanitation, water, clean energy, clean electricity, and clean transportation. That requires investments. And if you do that, of course, India will recover to the same GDP per capita as before. But the content of GDP, the economic activities, will be more sustainable if you choose to stimulate the right sectors.
Do you mean to say that we will be more comfortable if we stimulate the agriculture sector? Because 50% of our manpower is from around 42.38% is from agriculture sector. So do you think that we have to concentrate more on the agriculture side or on industry?
I think, yeah, but they're different agriculture. My master's education is in agriculture and economics, and I know that you can either support very industrial agriculture, lots of pesticides and artificial fertilizers, or you can support a more regenerative agriculture, where you have a better crop rotation and more organic agriculture. And this is more sustainable to support the right kind of agriculture. But then you also have to invest in water sanitation and, of course, health sector and education and sustainable production, reforestation, such things, to invest in ecosystems, because ecosystems is what ensures ourselves in the future. If we have well-functioning ecosystems, then we can also respond to future crises and future climate change. So it's important to have resilient ecosystems who can deliver sustainable food and sustainable forest products and sustainable water supplies.
I invite Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnaik. He is former managing director of Indian Railway Finance Corporation. His specialized area is green economy.
Good morning, Professor Thomas. It was really
Hello.
very nice listening to you in the morning. Presentation has really gone off very well. And some of the key points which I have noted is the strategy part of it. You have advocated for a four-pronged strategy, all right? So out of this four, the third strategy is somewhat, as being a man of finance background, I just would like to know your viewpoint. Investing in sustainable growth, technology and divesting from fossil fuel, right? So it is, to me, in a developing country like India, it is easier said than done. Okay. So for this strategy to work out, India needs to have again, a clear-cut strategy, all right? For example, they need to see if at all they are going to make in green investment in green technologies, where from the fund will come. Now, as you understand, the COVID situation, most of the countries have gone into recessions, including India. As Professor Woman has already said, after the first quarter, the country's economy is in shambles. We don't really know in the quarter two, quarter three, or quarter four whether we can look upwards or not, because the COVID situation is still to be managed in a better way in our country. Maybe the whole 2020-21 will be a disaster. But then, as you rightly said, we need to look upward, we need to look forward, and there is a window open for us in the form of green economy. In fact, this is one of my talk in the third day, where I'll be talking about the green financing. But I was just wondering, even if we talk of green financing, India alone in the present condition, raising the fund is a big issue in the country, in our domestic scenario. What I personally feel is that it requires a collaborative approach between the developed nations and the developing countries like India. All right. So I just want to listen to your viewpoint, how such collaborative approach can be made workable for the green economy to evolve in our country like India.
Thank you. It's a very important question. We definitely need more international collaboration, and I think the green economy is very promising. And I think I wrote that the green economy is particularly promising for low-income countries and middle-income countries. So I think for India, it is important to strive for green growth, to make sure that what the woman was asking for is to have a green growth, so that the recovery after COVID-19 is sustainable recovery, so that you invest in sustainable infrastructure. And you're asking, where does the finance come from? I don't know how the Asian Development Bank, how they think about these things, but I think all regional banks, like the European Investment Bank and the Asian banks and even the World Bank, they think very much about how can we support and finance the sustainable transformation of all different countries. How can we make sure that countries that we see this as a window of opportunity or a policy window to really make a transformation. So we don't invest in aeroplanes, we don't invest in fossil fuels, but we try to steer the investment towards solar power, and wind power, and clean transportation, clean electricity, and more education, and better health and housing. And for India, where there are lots of material needs not satisfied, of course, this will result in lots of demand for concrete, building materials, and this will take a lot of carbon dioxide to build. So I don't think India can strive for reducing carbon dioxide. So I try to make clear in my presentation that it is the high-income countries that have responsibility to reduce emissions, whereas the middle-income countries and the low-income countries, they can be satisfied by stabilizing emissions and making sure that emissions do not increase. Because at the global level, we have to reduce emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases by 80% within the next 25 years. So all countries have to do what you can do. And India will be the most populous country in a couple of years. It will pass China to be the most populous country. And of course, India has a huge responsibility to lead the way to more sustainable development. And for this, of course, you need help. So I totally agree with you, Santosh, that we need collaboration, international collaboration. And we need to collaborate at the national level, at the regional level with Asian Development Bank, and at the international level, global level, with the World Bank, and partnerships with the European Investment Bank and so on. Because now in Europe, the European Commission has launched a Green Deal, which means basically green growth. So it is the green economy recovery, which I think it's a good start, but I think we need to strive higher in Europe because we are high income countries. So we must do much more than just stabilizing emissions, because the European Commission is talking about stabilizing emissions and they have to go down very much. But for India, I think it's okay to stabilize emissions and have a small growth of a few percent every year. And this growth must be green. And it's very important that the financing sector, all these banks, are taking the responsibility and support investments in sustainable technologies. Thank you.